Let me introduce you to Raul Rodriguez and take you back to about January the 20th of this year. The Sheriff's Office received an investigation tip out of Orlando that there was a 16 or 17-year-old girl that was possibly engaged in consensual sexual conduct with Raul. An investigation began. What we learned is between September of last year and December of last year, a 16-year-old girl who then turned 17 was having a relationship with Raul, who was 31. Of course, that's against the law. So we began an intensive investigation only to have the 17-year-old victim and the mother refuse to cooperate. We made at least 5 contacts between the mother and the child to try to get them to cooperate in the investigation of where Raul was the suspect. The victim, the 16 and 17-year-old child, met Raul through her dad because Raul was the dope dealer to her dad. It was alleged as part of the investigation that not only was she having consensual sex with Raul, but he was providing drugs to her as well as to her father. As time went on, there determined to be a conflict that grew in anger between Raul and our deceased victim today. Our deceased victim today was the father of the 17-year-old girl who was having consensual sex in a relationship with her father's drug dealer, as it's reported to us. So now let's get just before 6 a.m. this morning. Raul, who lives 2 streets over, walked into the home and into the bedroom where our victim was laying, holding what's reported to be a sawed-off 20-gauge shotgun. And he orders him to the living room. There was a female witness in that bedroom and saw Raul take our victim out of the bedroom at gunpoint. She heard arguing in the living room, and then she heard a gunshot. Raul then is beginning to walk out of the house, and he sees the witness. And he said words to the fact that, "Keep my name out of it," as he walked out of the house and back to his home, which is about 2 streets away. Of course, 911's called. Our deputies are there literally in minutes. We set up a perimeter. We launched aviation. And what we saw from the air with our aviation unit was a suspect of Raul's description leaving one house, going to another house. We learned that was his mother's house. And then he got into a black Chrysler 300 and drove away. Our aviation unit followed the suspect, notified the ground units, and our deputies took him into custody. Our investigation is underway. We determined that the victim is shot once in the chest with what appears to be a 20-gauge shotgun, probably with birdshot. Keep in mind this is early in the investigation, and the information that I give you, we were all told, and we're still confirming this information. As you know, we release information early, and sometimes that has to be modified as our investigation goes on. But I think if this young lady and her mother had cooperated, we would have had Raul in prison or county jail lockup, and he wouldn't have been alive with his shotgun to shoot and kill her father this morning. And it's interesting that, and the news media may get tired of this, they're just going to have to. I'm so angry over this drumbeat of low-level nonviolent drugs. Once again, it's reported to us Raul was a K2 dealer to the victim and provided K2 and other drugs to our 17-year-old who refuses to cooperate. Our suspect, Raul, is a felon. He has a long history of criminal conduct from drugs to violent crimes. He was not locked up, which is not unusual. He only had 14 previous charges, 6, so he could have worked those through the system. But once again, it's not just low-level, quote-unquote, nonviolent drugs. It's the unintended or the consequences of that. Now, let me give you an illustration of the house, the place that our victim was staying. Some things you just can't make up. When we went there with our search warrant, we had to fight our way in. We had to fight our way in with 2 different cans of wasp spray. There were wasp nests, live wasp nests, all through the living room and the entry area. Our crime scene techs were stung. There were no windows in some of the areas of the residence. There were holes in the floor. There were stacks of garbage in this residence where our victim was shot down in cold blood as a result of first-degree murder by Raul. He was dangerous. He was violent. He was a drug dealer. He did what he wanted, and he fought and argued with our victim. And that morning, this morning, which is Friday, he goes into the house at gunpoint, takes him out of the bedroom, and summarily executes him in the living room with a wasp as witnesses. Multiples of wasps. It was one of the most amazing crime scenes I've seen in a long time.
Sheriff, there's a lot to break down here. Do we know why he executed the victim's father? What was that dispute over?
We don't know. We're so early into the investigation. Keep in mind, the shooting happened just before 6 this morning. We're releasing to you the best information we have at this early stage of the investigation, which is what we always do. We hope we can figure those details out later and provide them to you.
You obviously have a man in custody who has been arrested many, many times before, but it sounds like, and you just said it, this is early in the investigation, but it sounds like there might be more charges here, perhaps even against the 17-year-old's mother for culpable negligence or childhood neglect.
Well, we're praying that as a result of this horrible event, that maybe the 17-year-old's mom and the 17-year-old will say, gosh, if we'd have cooperated in January, he would be alive. So at least let's cooperate now so we can add more charges. But as you well know, when someone's 17, they say it's consensual. They don't cooperate. Their mom doesn't cooperate. They won't call you back. They won't come to meetings. It's very difficult to get a case like that even into the criminal justice system. If it were possible, we would have locked him up then.
Sounds like you could make a case of childhood neglect just based on the condition of the home.
The investigation's still underway. The 17-year-old was not living in this particular location. But this has more twist and turns than a bucket of snakes.
I know that you've seen more cases than you and I both care to count of drug abuse and people who fall down that rabbit hole. Are the conditions at the home, in your opinion, because of that, they had just given up?
Usually what happens, as a blanket statement, their drugs become more important than their wife, their family, their children, their health, their hygiene. They put drugs in front of everything. This place was unbelievable. When you go in this mobile home and you find big gaping holes in the floor, no glass in the windows, wasp nests growing throughout the living and kitchen area, and you find grass and flowers growing out of and from the roof of this place, it is unbelievable. You would look at that, absent people being there, and say that place is totally uninhabitable. And people were living in there. And he walks boldly into this home that's not his with the shotgun, brings the victim out of the bedroom at gunpoint. They argue, and he executes him, shoots him in the chest, almost point blank, with what we believe to be a 20 gauge shotgun.